Hey everybody! So in this video I wanted to talk really quickly about file architecture and directory structure in Meteor React apps. So for the past couple days I've been mainly refactoring stuff and kind of thinking about all this a lot, and the first thing I did is look at what other people were doing. For example, Mantra. And one thing that I really liked in Mantra is the distinction they have between components and containers. And that kind of goes back to this article by Dan Abramoff, Presentational and Container Components. And the distinction here is that container components handle data. So in Meteor, they subscribe and they make minimongo calls. And then with that data, they take it and they pass it on to the UI components or presentational components, which are kind of dumb, wrappers around the data that just spit out HTML. So this is a good way to, keep data logic out of your view layer and kind of keep things tidy. So let's see how that applies to what I'm doing here. Well, the first thing to notice is I've decided to split my components in feature level directories. So for example, everything that concerns chapters is in the chapters directory. So that would be everything you see here, like the sidebars, the buttons, the widgets, and so on. And same thing for like the videos, the whole admin area, the user flow, and so on. So inside this, I then have these 4 directories: components, containers, layouts, and pages. So components is for UI components. So what I was talking about before, these components don't really care about data. All they know is that they receive props and they do something with these props. So you'll notice there is no get meteor data mixin anywhere here. It's just props and render. Now, you do need to get your data somewhere, and to understand that, let's go to the router. So if you scroll down, you'll notice the components that I'm calling from the route all have page in their name. And that's just a convention that I've decided to use for top level components. So they're all called something page and they're in their very own pages directory. So when you click on the chapter route, it calls the chapter page component, which in turn calls the chapter layout and chapter components. By the way, sorry about the syntax highlighting. Something is a bit wrong, it seems. I'll have to fix that later. But anyway, so we have our page, and the page is a container. So it's in charge of loading data and making all these minimongo calls. Now, something to note is that not all pages are containers. For example, if you have an error page like this, all it does is spit out HTML. It doesn't handle data at all. So it's not a container. It's like a dumb component. But in this app, most pages do handle data in some way or another, which makes sense because usually you always want to render some of your app's data somewhere in a page. Now, as I said, the page can call the layout and a component, and that's why we have a layout directory as well. And finally, containers. Well, sometimes you need to handle data inside a page, more at the UI component level. So in this case, there's like an upgrade widget that's present on some chapter pages, but not all. So that's why this widget has its own get Meteor data function to handle its own data. So yeah, that's why it's a container and not just a component. And again, not all containers are pages and not all pages are containers. So it's kind of there's two levels of distinction here. I'm not sure if it really makes sense. That's in part why I'm making the video. So I'd be very curious to know like what you guys have been doing. Do you have this page, not page distinction? Do you have this container component, UI component distinction, or is it just everything together in one big mess? So yeah, let me know in the comments, and stay tuned for more React videos very soon.